Hey, in this episode of Throttle Stop Garage, we take the plastic model and we turn it into pipe. Okay, so in this episode we're going to take the plastic models and we're going to take some weld elbows. So these are 1.5" 321 stainless steel pipe fittings. And we've got straights, we've got long radiuses, we've got short radiuses that match what we have here in our model. Again, the green are the short radius, the vibrant orange is the long radius. So we've made exact models of these, and now we've got to take these complex shapes and these simple parts, put it all together and see if we can get a manifold tacked up.
Yeah, Alan contacts me, actually, of all things, and he says, hey, Craig, I don't think that's such a good idea. I'm pretty sure runner number 3 is going to hit your upper control arm dog bone. And, well, I'm not saying he was right, but it was awfully close. And I just missed it. You know, you're making these parts and you're thinking everything's going well. So here's me just struggling away on the bench. I've used the big triangles to sort of set some constraints, which is, it can't be bigger than the one I'm trying to replace. So I used the short radius there at the start and then played around for, man, it must have been 2 hours in order to get this actually to come out right. Then you throw a little bit of that clear tape on it once you're done, and that becomes the new model. Now we're trying to just figure out how it all goes together, right? So out come the short radius. So I'm just matching wherever I see the green color, I'm putting a short radius turn in, and wherever I've got orange, that means I get to use the long ones. The jigs are available, so these little cut jigs, I've got them in the Thingiverse site. Just look for Throttle Stop Garage, all one word, and you'll find me. I'm there, and I've posted all the models here, so you can do this. But with an angle finder and that simple model, you can pop those things out and get the angles right. Again, I've limited the number of angles in the plastic model to facilitate cutting. Actually, I just know it'll make it easier, and you can always find an angle somewhere that'll make it all work. I did leave this long just to show you how much fiddling was going in to getting these things clamped up. Like, I spent most of a morning just trying to get this to work.
So these are the clamps that I'm using in order to clamp the pieces of pipe together as we start fitting things up. They are made by Ice Engine Works. I'm not too sure if they're being made anymore. I bought these used quite a few years ago in preparation for the project. And you can see that they've got 2 sets of movable links, right? There's a shorter link and a longer link. The shorter link is always meant to go towards the shorter side radius of whatever 2 tubes or pipe you're putting together, and then you're meant to adjust these to find where the pipes are joining to be concentric, and then tighten them down to have them held together. They do hold quite tightly, and they would then permit you to make a nice tack without having to worry about how to hold the pieces together while you're performing the tack, which is always a challenge. So when I started fitting up runner number 1, of course runner number 1 here is one of those here's the plastic model. Okay, so you can see how it fits up into the collector, down into the flange. And it's one of those really tricky joints where all of these angles, if any of them are out by just a little bit, then the tube won't either fit the head flange or it won't fit over here into the merge collector. So I couldn't even get this tube marked properly. So it doesn't matter that, again, I know all the distances are accurate. Those 2 tubes, I don't need any more tube parts or pieces to fit it up, and you don't want to be doing this job 3 times. The idea behind the plastic model is to make the pipe model easier to accomplish. I was finding that this was actually incredibly frustrating, and I have a lot of patience. So, as always, I've had to design something to solve my problem. In other words, I know this works. I know that these 2 45s here, plus a 30mm long piece in the middle, a short radius and a long radius, I know that that's the solution to this particular runner. What I couldn't get was the intersecting angles to all be correct. So what I've done is, again, 3D printing It's probably the most enabling technology for folks in your garage trying to build cars. If you're trying to restore a car, maybe it's different for you. But for me, I would consider a 3D printer to be an essential tool. I have no idea how I would make do without one. Again, given that I don't have a lathe or a mill, additive technologies are really working for me. So I designed the following ring. It's got 6 little bumps on it. Each one of those, like this outside radius is larger than any of the outside radiuses of my pipe. The pipe is nominal pipe, so the interior dimensions have to be no smaller than a set size, no larger than a set size, but they do vary in size. And between the two elbow radiuses, they're a little different. And then between the lengths of straight, it's a little different. So I simply made the printed part to be larger than the largest diameter that I'd measured. Then what I'm doing is just cutting. So I'll get my knife out and I'm just trimming down these nubs until they perfectly fit inside each segment. So inside each one of these right now, I have one of these intersections, as well as into the merge and into the head to keep things lined up. And then what happens is the pipe, the metal pipe, now behaves just like the plastic pipe, and I can simply rotate each one of the segments into the correct orientation for the singular solution that there is to this particular problem. Once I'm done, I can then mark each one of those intersections. I can leave these pieces inside the tube, right? Then I can install the clamps, right? And then just hook the tube aligning tool out and then perform the tack. Okay, so let's get the rest of these done up. I'm going to tack them up singly, so as I get one runner completed, I'm going to tack it up. So I'll also be using purge plugs. So that one gets the purge line, and this one has just got a diffuser on it, and then the gases escape through the top side. So I'll be using purge plugs even to tack these up. I prefer to do things the correct way. So I back purge stainless steel. It's not just a habit, it's a best practice, so says everyone.
Well, let's put it to the test. So we install the little rings and then get those clamps put on. And what did I learn from all of that? I learned that these clamps, they don't work on the short radius tubes. The radius is just too tight for them. There's nowhere for them to grip properly. So I did use them for the first couple until every time I tighten them up, they would pull the joint open. And the joint was really nicely done, so no reason for the joint to come open. So I stopped doing it, and I would just hand hold them, and it worked fine. But this is the first one, so I'm going to frustratingly go through the entire process. So, oh, and by the way, when you're purging this stuff, I'm running that purge line at about 2 cubic feet an hour, and it takes just like 30 seconds to purge that tube. Like, don't be sitting there for a year. You're not purging a great big thing. Like, there's no volume in that tube at all. So just switch it on, get your tacks laid in there quick, and then away you go. Now, some of the time I'm using just a little bit of filler wire, and I did find my purge line would fall out of those purge tubes. So again, if you think this stuff's easy, remember this video lap stuff does take out all the swearing. Anyway, so we get it all knocked in, all nicely tacked up. A lot of the time, even though I've got the rod in my hand and it's only a 45 thou rod, I'm not actually using any rod. The most satisfying click when that thing goes up and in for the last time. And then I started getting a little bit smarter with processes after that first one. You set the tube up in your block, and then away you go. And then I was just marking all the parts, getting ready to cut them all at once. the short radius one was just a little loose, right? So I wanted to get that a little tighter. So a little bit of electrical tape to the rescue, got that solved. And then once we go over to get these things fitted up, again, I didn't shoot a video of me, you know, grinding all the weld preps and doing all the other work. I mean, it's not necessary, but boy, I sure did chew through a lot of these little rings. I think I did 36 when I printed them, and I've used all but about 4 in the end. I didn't even end up taking them out when I was welding. I just left them in. You got about a 1 in 6 chance maybe of actually tacking up on the actual ABS. I only did it a few times. You know when you do it, but for the most part you can see it, and it's not a problem. That runner number 2. It comes back to haunt me. I had to do it twice, but whatever. You end up living and learning, right? For each and every one of these projects, there's so much learning that goes on. Again, just because the wire's in there doesn't mean I'm actually using any. For the most part, I'm not using any because I want to get that root fully fused. There's lots of fail here. This is hard to do, to burn all the way through the land that's in the pipe, but I did the best that I could to ensure that I've got that bottom end fused up in the tack. Yeah, here you can see I've pretty much given up on using the clamps because of all the short radiuses that I'm using to make that runner. And I mean, I think the best practice for those when you're tacking them, by the way, is to not tack them in line with the radius. I usually tack them perpendicular to the radius first. I don't know if that makes any sense, but if you weld, you'll know what I'm talking about. Because then you can lean on the joint to close up the gap that'll eventually and always happen. So here's the gap. That one needed to be closed up with a clamp because I couldn't push it shut. And then we finally get the rest of this tube done. And if you hit the ABS ring, a little brush comes out, cleans it up. And don't forget to clean your tube and make it nice and tidy. All right, last of these tubes getting done. Little 22-degree angle coming up. Just thought I'd throw in some quick video of how I'm cutting those tubes. So I'm using one of my machinist's 321 block, and I'm pushing really hard up against the block and then pushing it through the saw, and that ensures that I'm staying in the same plane as the cut ends of the tube, and make sure that, again, whenever you're cutting one of these, it has to be on the same radius as the tube, and the cut has to be round. Like, you want that finish cut to be round. You don't want it to be an oval, because that makes fitting it up well, difficult and weird, so don't do that. So you want to try to get it all the way through. I didn't even break my saw blade, which amazes me to this day given how much cutting I was doing. One saw blade for the entire manifold. And there, if you're careful, I was looking for 22.5. Yeah, that worked. Alright, last couple of tubes getting fit up. I'm now starting to get a little bit of a hang of how to do it. Of course, with everything, you start getting good at it right about when you're done. So, in the last bits go. And then finally, the last tube. So you get this last little tube done. And it fought and fought and fought in order to get finally finished. But we did eventually defeat it, as you'll see. Alright, let's just watch the rest. I don't know if you can tell as you're watching, but I'm starting to lose it right around now. I've already pulled the plastic model back out. I've been fiddling around with the fitment on number 3 for, I don't know, this is like, I've really shortened this up. Oh, let's add another 22 in here. Let's see if we can figure this out. How come the plastic model fit fine, but it just didn't seem to, anyway, I was missing something somewhere. and it really did mess the whole thing up. And then, you know, I already know that you can't actually use these clamps for the short radiuses, but I tried that for a little while, and I gave up. I drove myself kind of half crazy, but there you can see the one little ring inside. Turn the line on and just start tacking it up. Yeah, so with the purge line on, I'm going to tack that little ring on, and that's going to fix runner number 4, which was causing me endless problems. And then we can get back and finish up runner number 3. So there's 4 kind of going together. I'd sort of, at this point, I stopped using the clamps and just started using the rings. And then I fished the rings out of there after each intersection. But remember, you can always just put the straights in, because it doesn't matter which way you turn those, they're all the same. So limiting the number of moving parts is important. But there you see it. Like, you touch it, suddenly it opens up, the gap opens up huge, and now we have problems.
All right, so you can see the advantage now of having the rings. So I know from previous mock-up that my 17 millimeter wide ring that I made was too much for here, and I did need to go back to a 12 millimeter just like the model said. But the plastic rings also just allow you to rotate. Like, you can see that these are not fitting, but we know from the plastic model that these distances will fit. We just need to rotate the elements which I kind of do just sort of one at a time, and you rotate them until you see the gap close up along the way. And once you've got them all rotated, so in rotating that one, I can now have a cap here. Half the time they do that. Actually, I don't think I showed any of that last time. It's not uncommon for these things to sort of, they hold together, but only just. And there, we finally have the model completely closed up. Then, with just a little bit of tape, we can hold them in place, right? So that they're not going to fall apart on us. And then we want to make sure, even now, you can give it a little bit of flex. We want to get it all, as much flex out of it as we can, because when we weld it, there's no flex in it. So you have to hold every joint tight, mark all the joints, tack them up, and then test them as you tack them, making sure that you don't get something just a little bit out of place and you end up with a little gap.
Yeah, so it's important to give yourself a little time out every once in a while. Just stop, reset, go back, walk away. Don't forget to walk away. It's so important when you're doing this. Like, you'll hate yourself later if you don't get it right. And nobody on the internet's going to care. So you might as well just stay calm. And if it's not going well that day, I had about 2 days that I just literally just dropped it all, turned the cameras off, walked out of the garage because it was about to get thrown across the shop, and no one wants to see that. So and then you got to fit it up. You got to fit the last of it up. Now, I don't think I did very much of this using the clamps, just on the one joint where it mattered. You know, you come back and you think, why am I making my life worse by trying to do this? Well, don't. Just keep on the positive side and then go, okay, well, I can get this done. This isn't a problem. Anyway, so then it starts going, okay, you know, and then gonna get this last little bit tacked up, get it out of the way, and yeah, putting in a purge line. I couldn't figure out how to purge this particular tube. There was no way this purge was gonna work with the caps and the tubes and all the pieces. So I literally just took all the tubes off, all the runners came off, and then I just fitted it up, runner number 3. I knew where it needed to go, and it was the absolute only way to get this done. So use whatever you got to get it going. And the last little bit there is going to get tacked up and put in place. And whenever you see it smoke like that, by the way, that means I hit the little ring on the inside. So that's a little melted plastic. It doesn't hurt anything long term. You just have to get in there and clean out the mess you just made. But anyway, all done. And when you're tacking, I use at least 6 tacks. I like 4. What are you trying to make $1 or something? You're working in your garage. More tacks is definitely better. So I'm using between 6 and 8 tacks for each one of those intersections, which pretty much guarantees they don't move. And then every time I'm tacking, I'm blowing it with air until I can handle it with bare hands. Stainless really doesn't like being overheated. If you're in a rush, again, walk away, right? It's super important to not be cooking your stainless.
So that's a wrap on the tacking. Again, I was purging while I tacked. So these are my purge plugs. I broke down and bought a set. Other than the fact that it kept falling out, it's not that big a deal. Remember, argon's heavier than air, so you don't have to go crazy when that happens. But we're focusing in on trying to get the gaps, even on the tacks, as tight as we can. But it doesn't always go perfectly, right? So I really struggled with the third tube. It was tough. It's a complex runner. Hard to get right. Because it did need that little jankiness right here at the end. So it needed this little jankiness here at the end in order to kind of come around the corner nicely. Again, I changed this design. I think this is the 4th time. And this was the tube that was causing some of the problems. So it ended up with one of these angles probably should have been touched up a little bit more. But anyway, it's not that big a deal. I've got a very small gap right here at the top. Not trying to fool anybody. You do end up with these from time to time. It's not the end of the world. By any stretch, it's not much of a gap. And it's easy enough to fill. Alright, so all that work just means there's a lot more welding yet to come. I don't mind telling you, it's starting to get a little heavy. But there it is, all tacked up. The pipes are just held in with a little bit of tape. So now it's time to take the runners off of this, get the runners welded up, and that's going to be in the next episode. There's way too much left. And this episode's already plenty long enough. Alright, so I hope that has helped with getting some knowledge out there on how you might accomplish getting a pipe manifold made. Hey, also, new t-shirt design in the Teespring store. If you're interested in supporting the channel, we sure would appreciate it. Link is in the description. Also link in the description, although sometimes it's not working. I've put all the plastic models for all the bits and pieces. I've put those up on Thingiverse, so you can get access to them there, and I hope that will help in your pipe manifold build. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Keep your stick on the ice. I've also put up all the plastic models and everything. I've put them up. Dog barking. Thanks, dog. What do you do? Take 2. That's what you do.